We're going to begin with Madi, who's going to be reading the prayer of St. Francis.
I'm Madi, Casper's niece, and I will be reading the prayer of St. Francis, which reflects the love and service to others that Casper embodied throughout his life. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. It is in the pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Experiencing some technical glitches, and I'm sure Casper's up there laughing. I think Nancy, we're not going to have the Josh Brewer recording, okay? Unless you'd like to come and sing. So, the next member of the family, Ryan, is going to share with us the important scriptures that Casper loved.
Hello, my name is Ryan Bender, Casper's nephew, brother's Madi, and I'm going to be reading, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I'm going to be reading Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 13. It was read at Nancy and Casper's wedding day, so I'm told. I wasn't there, but I know it's very special for them. I'm happy to read it today. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror, dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love.
Casper loved this scripture, which his Ryan said was read at their wedding, and it became emblematic of his life. Casper was a man of faith. He was a person of hope, and he lived a life of love, which we will be hearing much about during this service celebrating his memory. Casper was born 82 years ago today in Sharptown, New Jersey, the only child of Betty and Casper Carlton Sr. He came from humble roots. His parents weren't church-going folks, which is why at the age of 5, he found his way to the nearby Methodist church. He had seen his friends and neighborhood kids going off to Sunday school, and he wanted to know what it was all about. He found a place there, and that place continued throughout his life. His faith as a United Methodist Christian informed his life, his marriage, his family life, and his commitment to reaching out in love to all that he met. It was love which undergirded the principles of social justice that he valued so highly. This church became a centering point for both Casper and Nancy, who became members in 1967, shortly after they were married and moved to Sacramento. I had the privilege of being their pastor from 1984 to 1997, years when Casey and Jay were teenagers. Need I say more? But not today. Well, Casper was wonderful to work with, and it was a joy to encounter him again, and his hugs and his loving spirit when my husband Rod and I moved back to Sacramento several years ago after my retirement. Well, we have all come together today to honor the memory of this remarkable man, someone who touched the lives of so many. We have come to laugh and to cry, to remember Casper's endearing qualities and express appreciation for all that he meant. I'm reminded of a line by the poet St. Vincent Millay, where she wrote, "Where you used to be, there is a hole in the world." And this sentiment is true for many of us here today, and especially for Nancy, who was closest to 50 years, including the years of illness, his death last November. We all grieve the death of this most loving and amazing man. Death never comes easily for those who are left behind, even when it is expected. To lose someone so loved for who he was, husband, father, uncle, revered teacher, friend, is difficult. And so we need to acknowledge and express our feelings because they are a natural part of grieving. Shakespeare said in Macbeth, "Give sorrow words." And I think Casper would want us to share sorrow as well as our tears and our joy. The writer of Ecclesiastes reminds us that for everything there is a season. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance. With birth and life, there is also death, and yet somehow we are never quite prepared for it. And the feelings it brings of loneliness, sadness, regret. This is a time for all these kinds of feelings. And this is also a time to offer thanksgiving to God for Casper's life. A time to laugh and to dance. You are doing this through your presence here today. Casper Carlton touched each of you, And as someone has said, those who touch us live forever. And his life will be forever beloved to us in memories cherished. And we saw some of those memories on the screen during those that wonderful video. Memories cherished, lessons learned, values passed on, and love made richer because it was shared with him. Yes, we shared love with Casper, and so we give thanks for God's work in and through him and the legacy that he leaves. This is a time to dance, as we hopefully might do later in the fellowship hall after lunch, when the Blood Band is going to be playing 3 of Casper's favorite songs, one of which is Chubby Checkers, The Twist. And yes, we can laugh with that, perhaps, as we think of Casper doing the twist. And maybe we can get Nancy up there, too. Well, this occasion calls us, as people of God, to affirm our faith, remembering that the God of all creation, the one who gave us life, is also with us in death. Faith speaks of eternal life, as well as the abundant life. Not only of hope in the future, but hope in this present moment through Jesus Christ. We offer thanksgiving today for Casper's life, but even more importantly, we have come to praise God, the God who gave him life, who held him in the midst of suffering and death, and who has loved him now into life eternal. Today is the day to say of Casper Carlton, well done, God's good and loving servant. Yes, faith, hope, and love abide, and the greatest of these is love. Thanks be to God. Great of Nancy, who will be reading the thoughts of the Reverend George Bender, a retired United Methodist pastor who's in his early 90s and is Nancy's older brother. He loved Casper as a brother, as you will hear in his words. Marston.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marston Bender, one of Nancy Casper's grandnephews, and I'll be reading a transcript today given to me by my grandfather, Reverend George Bender. Those of you who know my grandfather know that he is a tremendous orator, and while I can never hope to match his talent, I will endeavor to read his word as written the best I can. So, dear friends and kin of Casper Carlton, we are here today to honor Casper and his life of service to others. Over the span of Casper's 81 years, he was a volunteer in the Peace Corps, at the Centennial United Methodist Church, in the community as an active parent, and as a promoter of the international relations by facilitating the bringing of 2 exchange students from Spain. His last stint as a volunteer was the South Sacramento Interfaith Partnership Food Closet, one of his greatest contributions in his 35-year career as a high school teacher and school counselor with the Sacramento Unified School District. In all of these roles, he gave of himself in an effort to make the world a better place. My wife, Polly, and I came to love Casper because of his warm and generous heart. As most of you know, he loved to give hugs and pass them out freely throughout his life. His decision to be a teacher in the impoverished land of Ethiopia was an example of his caring for children and youth, no matter what their skin color or religion or their station in life. He often shared that his life was changed after serving the Peace Corps. It was there that he became a true lover of all humanity, understanding that we're all human beings with the same feelings, aspirations, needs, and hearts. The impact on his students was confirmed when just 4 years ago he received a call from a man who had been a student of his in Ethiopia. This man had taken the time to locate Casper by contacting the National Peace Corps office in D.C. And he told Casper that he wanted to thank him for his inspiration and his belief in him, which gave him the courage to become a successful surgeon in Hungary. As a school counselor, Casper truly cared deeply about students who needed help dealing with tough problems at home and at school. He was a significant bright light in their lives and helped point them in a positive direction. A highlight of his counseling career was a student from McClatchy High School who went to Cornell University for college. This female student graduated with the highest honors from Cornell and was named a Merrill Presidential Scholar. As a presidential scholar, she was to select a teacher from her high school who had the greatest impact on her life. She chose Casper, who was the first counselor selected in the history of Cornell for this honor. The university flew Casper to Cornell to be alongside his student in their honor. As a brother-in-law, Casper was a delightful friend and a live spark in our midst. When we first met him, he was a big 6'1" guy who loved to eat. We all remember one of his first visits to us when we served ice cream following dinner. Polly got out the bowls to serve it up, and Casper said, "Do you have a bigger bowl?" Polly, who loves to laugh and tease, turned around and grabbed a large vegetable bowl, proceeded to fill it up to the brim with ice cream, and said, "Is this enough?" We laughed at that memory for years to come. Time and time again, Casper expressed gratitude for marrying into a God-inspired family, who helped him keep his spirits high when he was tempted to become discouraged about the world's problems. In humility, he seldom realized, though, how much we were lifted up by knowing him. It was a wonderful two-way street. Over the years, Polly and I shared many wonderful trips with Casper and Nancy throughout the United States, Western and Eastern Canada. He introduced us to his lifelong friends from his high school football team, his roots in New Jersey, and his lifelong friends on Ocracoke Island in North Carolina. In exchange, we shared with him delight eating blue crab on the backwater of the Chesapeake Bay, Nova Scotia, and the glories of Maine and New England where Polly grew up. These shared experiences provided us with cherished memories. Casper was in so many ways a blessing to all of us who knew him. We will miss him as the kind, caring, and uplifting person that he was. God bless us all as we celebrate his life today. Thank you.
Thank you, Marston. I think your grandfather would be proud. Those of you who knew Casper knew that he loved music, and he had a very eclectic taste in music. Jazz, rock, blues, classical, and church music. And we have a special guest today, Pamela Knox, who's a member of this congregation. And she's going to be singing 2 hymns, one now and one as we close the service, that Nancy picked, that again, reflect the life that Casper lived and the faith that he had that was so dear to him. Pamela has recently had some back issues, so she's going to be sitting, singing, but she's here, and we're very thankful for this.
You know, sometimes you might have a plan of what you're going to do. And when I spoke to Nancy, and she told me all the way last month that she would like me to sing, I said, "Oh yeah, definitely, I would like to do it." I had no idea I was going to have this rough last couple of days. But I forge ahead with this because, like many of you here, I have a strong, strong faith in God. And I just put it to God. I said, "God, I really want to be here. Give me what I need to be able to be here today." The reason why I wanted so much to come is because I really feel that Casper is such a wonderful person. And he and Nancy often sing my best for you today.
Thank you, Pamela and Rick, for that beautiful, beautiful solo. I know Casper heard it where he is. The next two on our program don't need any introduction. Casey and or Jay, whoever wants to come.
Last time I stood up here, I had to wash my hair. But I made it. Welcome all, and thank you for making time to be here today to help us honor Casper's life. We truly appreciate it, especially as circumstances are less than ideal these days or years. So thank you. I know Dad is here with us and thrilled to see everyone gathered for the occasion. I can almost hear him now laughing his joy out loud. Now, in coming up with a way to honor Casper with mere words, a theme to merge the various threads of his life was wanted. Luckily, it came to me straight out. Connection. If Casper was about anything, he was all about connection. Genuine connection. Connection with people. Connection with nature. Connection with community. Connection across divides. Connection via hugs and humor. Connection with dirt and sweat, pencil and paper, backwood and pig leather, slate, stone and chalk, tire and tarmac, cup and plate, pew and podium, and in art. His journey of connection began early in a crossroad village in southern New Jersey, a spot so tiny if you drove past and looked, you'd still miss it. Being from such a lonely and, let's be honest, economically impoverished and culturally challenged place couldn't quash Casper's enthusiasm for connection. He was passionate about connection from the start and found it at school with his peers and the school staff. Casper would engage with anyone, treating all fellow humans the way that he wished to be treated. He was not the class clown, but rather the class passionate. He loved school, his classmates, his teachers, as well the coaches and assistant coaches he played for over the years. And photos from that era clearly show and evidence this passion. He also found connection at the local Methodist church, where he attended Sunday services throughout his youth, inspired and comforted by the community he experienced there, and the teachings of Christ and the gospel he received annually. And he found it in team sports, playing baseball, basketball, and football, excelling in all, but particularly in love with baseball, which, as some of you may not know, he would pursue after graduating high school. He didn't talk about it much, likely due to a conflicted view of the whole affair, but Casper apparently went to Pennsylvania in the year 1958 to attend spring tryouts for the Pittsburgh Pirates. Something he talked about so little, I misremembered that he had tried out for the Yankees and spread that false rumor unintentionally for a long time. So here's my correction. At any rate, his family is here to attest to the fact that he didn't pass muster. He did not make the team. Something to do with his running time being compromised by years of playing old school padded leather only football, resulting in a bad case of bum knee. And though he failed to make the team and his dream of going pro was done, he succeeded in instead of going on to a different adventure altogether. In fact, it would be safe to say football is at least in large part responsible for Dad meeting Mom, and thus for my brother and I being here today. So, thank you, football. Now, after what could only have been a devastating setback for him, Casper could have been forgiven for turning around and going home to live a more provincial life than his heart might have desired. But he switched gears instead and continued the journey of connection, determined to leave South Jersey in the rear view. He left home for the second time in his life to attend Methodist Union College in Kentucky, where he studied business and history and indulged his passion for people, connecting with other students and college staff there. He did a stint as class president as well as in other student government positions, and secured the praise of his peers in not a few dreaded popularity contests in fashion at the time. Best smile, best laugh, most likable, and some of you may be surprised to learn, best dancer. Of course, he didn't dance much in the last 50 or so years of his life, mainly due to that dirt bum leg. But Casper was known to cut a rug with real style back then. On many an evening, he could be found in front of the campus snack shack, which featured a radio. The kids would dial in the only station playing rock and roll, and Casper, along with a few other brave souls, would perform some of the latest dance steps, his favorite being the twist, of which he was considered an aficionado of the highest order. It may sound pretty tame now, but this was considered prime entertainment in Appalachia. Now, I'd like to pause in my eulogy here for a sec just to point out a few years before he passed. Casper finally got to see his musical hero, Chubby Checker, live in concert, with his whole family there doing the twist in the aisles. That was a good day. And by the way, if you search for Chubby right now, you'll find plenty of recent footage of him on stage doing the twist for fans till this very day. And that's kind of cool. If things were going well for Casper, they only got better in his junior year when he met a lovely Ohio belle by the name of Nancy Bender. It wasn't long before he knew he had found the one. I know this because I found their premarital letters when I was a kid, and they read like something out of a sappy romance novel back then. Today, of course, they stand as a cherished memory and testament to my dad's extremely soft side. At any rate, apparently Nancy felt the same. And so was Casper's trajectory in life significantly shifted once more. He would soon be joining Nancy in the sociology club and in volunteering for programs assisting local communities, including those in the nearby Appalachians of Hatfield and McCoy fame. The next thing he knew, he was enjoying a newfound path in life, connecting with those in need, and learning how best to be of service to others. And he couldn't have been happier. The only hitch was that he had met Nancy when he was a junior and she was a frosh, so that when he graduated, she still had 2 years yet to complete her degree. Now, if he wondered what to do in the interim, it wasn't for long. At the end of 1961, Casper decided to heed the call of one of the great inspirations of his life, President John F. Kennedy. Kennedy had requested volunteers from across the nation to join a new kind of international cooperative effort aimed at promoting world peace and friendship. The program was deemed the Peace Corps. Upon application, Casper was accepted in the Corps and promptly sent with the first wave of volunteers to the farthest reaches of Africa in the land of Ethiopia. There, he found a wondrously wide world of connection he could never have imagined in his little crossroad community back in Jersey, or within the cloistered halls of academia, and he absolutely loved it. He spent the next 2 years there teaching young Ethiopians typing and shorthand, officially, and I have no doubt teaching them unofficially how to be empathetic and kind and genuine and to have some fun doing it. Though, as he would point out, he himself was learning arguably much more, not only about dramatically different places and people, cultures and societies, but also about himself and his own culture and society. And ultimately how to be brave and open and to forge meaning out of life with your own innate skills while assisting and encouraging others to do the same. As children, Jay and I grew up surrounded by paintings of Ethiopians and African landscapes, strange baskets and paraphernalia, not understanding why that was, but not really questioning it either. Only later did I come to understand it was where Casper found himself, and where his life path became clear in such a profound and unique way, that he would be forever marked out, altered, not technically an expatriate, but one who lived and identified with the other. And it gave him a unique perspective. He was alternately rhapsodic and despondent when discussing his time volunteering and couldn't enjoy recollections for too long without becoming somewhat melancholy. And I wonder if he hadn't had Mom to come back to, if he might not have found a way to stay. I believe he was drawn to it that much. Happily, for all concerned, he had Nancy to return to, and once he was back stateside with her, they were soon married, and just as soon at another crossroads. Now, here he could have easily have been forgiven for finding work near friends and family, settling down, as so many did, without thought to further adventure. But with Nancy now in his corner, ready to explore the world of possibility with him, Casper knew what he wanted to do next. Engage young people and assist them in maximizing their potentials. The only question was how and where. Casper surmised getting in on the ground floor of things was easier out west, where employment and education was plentiful at the time. And let's be honest, the guy was a sucker for exploration and discovery, and still plenty young after all. So off he went, only this time with a deer co-pilot. After a short stint at New Mexico State University, where he earned his teaching credential, flipping tacos in a little mixing joint to help pay the way. And yes, that's right, kids. You used to be able to afford college on a taco flipper salary. I know. Go ahead and weep. We're at a funeral, so no one will notice. At any rate, Casper was soon hired by the schools district of a sleepy California town. It used to be around here somewhere. And he and Nancy hit the road once more and made their way to what would become their home base for life. It was also the young couple's first cross-country drive, and experience of California's decidedly epic proportion and heavenly beauty. They both fell in love at first sight and never looked back. Which brings me to Casper's obsession with travel and kinetic energy, which was as much a part of his journey of connection as his work was. And I happen to know his taking of a job that was off all summer was a major part of his career choice. Not that his wanderlust was sated by 3 months of vacation and driving time. Our perambulations went on year-round. We crossed this country like an interminable game of tic-tac-toe. We ascended to great heights, across the Sierra Nevada, the Cascades, the Grapevine and High Desert, the Colorado Rockies and Grand Teton Range, and descended to great depths, the Grand Canyon, Death Valley, South Jersey. We visited friends and family from one shining shore to the other, less shiny, to the less shiny one, East Coast, again and again in our old olive drab station wagon. We went on countless camping trips, weekend getaways, day rips, out-of-town games for every conceivable team sport played in California to watch my talented brother play you name it for nearly a decade. We took ski trips and sea trips, river trips and lake trips, tiny town trips and big city trips, and of course, an unseemly number of trips out to eat. Casper so loved to drive. And in the previous century, it was a very different experience driving in the valley. And that's all I'll say at the risk of driving the other old-timers here to tears. I happen to know that his diminished ability to travel in the last decade or so, and then the loss of his ability to drive altogether, greatly dampened his spirits, which is unfortunate but inevitable for one who found some of his greatest joys in taking to the open road. Now, even though his dream of becoming a cross-country trucker didn't work out, I believe his profound career in education would prove to be satisfactory compensation. His initial job here found him teaching business administration at the very first continuation school in California, and the only one remaining now in Sacramento, American Legion High. There he began much as he had in Ethiopia, the only difference being that he would ask students in that way that he had how they were, and I'm not even going to try, and they would tell him, and he would listen, and the next thing he knew, the bell was ringing, and not much was learned about business administration, but Casper certainly learned much about his students, and moreover himself, and his own genuine and unique gift for connecting with young people. And here I point out that this was his way of showing respect and acknowledging one's fledgling status. The primary takeaway from his early experiences with students was that he felt far better suited to engaging them about their challenges and fears, and listening to their hopes and dreams, than teaching them how to type. He saw clearly how he was able to help them realize their own value. He inspired self-worth and thus worthy achievement in more than a few students by being uniquely Casper. So he switched gears once more, wasting no time in earning his counseling credentials over the next 2 years so that he could get down to doing what he did best, helping young people navigate this big, scary world of ours. Now, I don't want to shock anyone, but in my own experience with peers back then, I found few who connected in any profound way with their own assigned school counselors. No offense is meant toward remedial counselors of the 20th century, of course. The job leaned then, as it still does, toward academic goals and concerns, with less emphasis put on addressing a student's unrelated personal experiences, their peer group, mental or physical wellness, non-academic interests. In other words, the totality of a person's identity. And then there's the fact that your average Gen Xer wasn't all that forthcoming, especially about sharing what made them tick with an adult in a position of authority. So it was, and continues to be, a tough gig, generally speaking. Not so for Casper, though. Most of you here understand implicitly the reasons for that, of course, but it bears a closer look. Casper engaged students' issues for over a decade at several different schools. He facilitated happy outcomes and better futures for his students during that period, of course, works which his family were occasionally made aware of when they would randomly meet one of his students out and about. But it wasn't until the late 80s when Casper took a position as student counselor just down the street here at McClatchy High School that we would learn the true extent of his influence and legacy of connection. By the time he got to McClatchy, Casper had a mission statement and action plan ready to go, and he enacted that mission from the first day of school. He went round to all the classes in a school with a population of over 2,000 students and introduced himself to the entire population in person. I've never heard of any other counselor do that. Okay, so let me back up while you digest that. This daunting feat must have taken quite a bit of connecting with the other school staff, in particular the teachers, to whom he necessarily had to introduce himself and his grand scheme, which you can bet involved all of them as well. He was determined and tenacious and genuine, and that combination won everyone over to his vision. Now, upon introducing himself to each and every student via this all-class tour, he let everyone know that there was a new counselor in town, and this one had an open-door policy. All were welcome whether they were assigned to him or not, and no issue was off the table. He made it clear he would help get you into the best university in the world if that's what you wanted. But he was also there just to listen if that's what you needed. Well, it wasn't long before they were lined up out the door to visit the affable and affecting Mr. C, as he became affectionately known around campus, where he could be seen in the halls and on the quad with a tab soda ever in hand, meeting and greeting the students on their turf as well as his, and they loved him for it, truly. Now, I can tell you from and I seem to have, I am missing a page. It seems to be right in line with what's been going on with this entire service since we started this, okay? I'll restart somewhere else. I lost my train of thought. Okay. Through a wide-ranging group of people via various social events, okay, fine, parties, as well as acquaintances of Jay's from his many storied years in sports across the city, we would meet them, Casper's students at McClatchy. Upon learning of our relation to Casper, they would brighten, and the love fest would begin in earnest. And this is how I learned my dad had fulfilled his mission and purpose. Because inevitably, the many students of his I met would say, often emphatically, and always with genuine sincerity, "Your dad saved my life." And I'm not joking about this. This actually happened to me somewhere in the range of 100 times in my life. And I would ask them, how exactly? At which point I would be regaled with some tale of youthful confusion, indiscretion, tragedy, or just a teen at the crossroads looking for advice, and how my father had played a key role in ameliorating or mitigating negative outcomes, read their various circumstances. That, my friends, is connection working overtime. And should you be under the impression that maybe these were outliers, let me assure you the opposite is true. Both my brother and I, as well Mom and Dad of course, would, over the decades, continue to meet those deeply affected by Casper's presence in their lives, however brief or minimal. All with slightly different takes on the same life-affirming, life-fostering, life-saving theme. The mission fulfilled via connection. right up to his last days on this plane of existence. In fact, when he was at Kaiser in his last days, and again, one last time, we were blessed to be there to hear it straight from the one affected, about how Casper, during his final days before being moved to the hospice wing, had given one of his nurses, a middle-aged Filipino woman, a special tool to help her with her own students, children whom she had made it her business to help care for and educate back in her humble village in the Philippines. He had explained the true colors method of identifying one's innate temperament, weaknesses, and strengths, and thus their most natural and likely satisfying life path, going as far as to make illustrations and writing the info down on paper, which he left for her when we moved him out of her care. She told us this when she came to check on him and found he had passed. She told us, she explained through tears as she stroked his hair about how deeply moved she was by his gesture and how she believed this method would be of great use and help to her in teaching and assisting her kids back in the Philippines. Connection to the very end. Casper, aka Mr. C. Casper, like the ghost. Casper, one with the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you.
Definitely am. I thank everybody so much for being here. I love you all very much. Being here and sharing, celebrating Casper's life, I'm still trying to figure out how I got so lucky to be a son of Casper Carlton. So lucky. And privileged is a key word. My better half, Angel Johnson, is here, and she's helped me understand what privilege truly is. And I've learned a lot all over age. And I just appreciate every day. So thankful that I'm just trying to figure out how I got so lucky. How I got so lucky to be the son of Casper Carlton. So I do want, at the count of three, I'd like all of you to join me. And we're going to say Casper Carlton together. At the count of three. So 1, 2, 3. Casper Carlton. So I got a little quick story about my father to help kind of shape who I am today and how much, what it was like a little bit to be his son. So there was an incident, it was about 1979, 1980 or so, and a car ran into our house. And my dad's, Casper, was in the living room. And Casey is in the bed. And I am in my parents' bathroom, about ready to take care of some business. So I hear this car down the street, and it crashes. So I hear all those crashes down the street. Then all of a sudden, I hear the engine rev and starts driving. You can hear it. And it starts getting closer and closer to the house, And I'm sitting there. You can hear it right now. And I can hear the car occurred, and it strikes the corner of the house, and it shakes our house so violently that I thought a plane had landed on the house. I seriously thought a plane landed on the house. And so I jump up. I don't even remember if I ever went to the bathroom. Popped up, was like, open the door. I see the corner of the house, a station wagon. I think it was a station wagon. And so the wheel is in the house, and see the headlight in the house. And Casper is, I'm like, Dad, a car hit the house. He's flying. I've never seen him run so fast. Never seen him run so fast. He tees off to the hallway and slams into the hallway because he's like looking left and right where Casey and I are, Nancy didn't work out this time anyway, but so he tees off and just runs into the wall and goes right and left, and I said, Dad, car in the house. So he runs outside, and so the neighbor says, the guy is out of the car, he's down the street, he runs towards the nature area of Silver Lake. Some of you from Sacramento know the nature area of Southland Park. So my dad goes on and with some neighbors, and they hunt this guy down and get him and bring him back to the house. So my dad's got one arm, and neighbor's got the other arm, and he's extremely inebriated. And so he gets back to get him on the lawn, and he looks up at my dad, and he says, aren't you my teacher? Teacher, aren't you? Yeah. And so this is like 79, 80, so, and at the time, Casper worked at a place that was called Argonauts. And so it was one of his Argonaut kids. Continuation of stuff. But so yeah, but it was one of those days, it's like he's just my hero. I love him so much, always will, and I will continue to become the best version of myself, of everything my father taught me. All the good qualities, and that day just it was like he was a protector. He's my hero, but also too I saw that day a dangerous situation where my father was vulnerable too. So I realized that, man, I was very scared for my father that day also, because it was a dangerous situation, and I didn't want him to run down the street and go after this guy. I was like, let's wait for the cops to come. But Dad didn't want to be a vigilante, man. But I hear everything, but still with that vulnerability too. I love my dad so much, and I'm just the luckiest person in the world, and thanks again for coming. I love you all so much. Let's go have a good time. Play some music.
Thank you, Casey and Jay. And I know Nancy's proud as well as that man up there watching them. As we get ready to close the service, we want to take a few minutes to offer any of you who might like to say a couple of words about your relationship with Casper, maybe a memory, something that made an impression on you. And I know it's not the easiest thing to do. I will have a mic over here. Is there anyone? This is on, yeah. Where? Here we go. I know this man. Say your name and.
Well, just the story I want to tell. on, what, 10 feet, 12 feet. We get over, and Nick's foot was sticking up in the air. I said, I can't get this wet. And I'm trying to figure out, how am I going to get this machine up? So I think the two of you and Casper and I finally got it up right. We got it down in the cabin. We became pros at that time on running a snow machine. And that, that's what I remember that. Oh, is Connie Rhodes here? Okay, Connie, you might appreciate this. We had to put a sock on, but we had to keep his foot dry. We used a rainbow bread wrapper. Thanks, Daryl. And then one last thing, the day that Casper passed, I want to say thank you. I just want to talk to Ivan.
Jerry and Irene Sadler were members of the Travels Fellowship group here, and they've been through a lot together, a lot of fun, a lot of good memories. Is there someone else that might like to share a brief memory? There will be, okay. Tell us your name. Lena.
So, Casper, when you talk about his hugs, that's Casper. And his hugs were the best hugs. And I remember, I love Nancy. And anytime I would get to see Nancy and Casper was with him, it was such a bonus just to get Casper's hug. And I missed him. And but I always think I'll carry with me that hugely enveloped feeling of love. And I know everybody in this room, everybody has that feeling and knows his love. His love was so big. So I'm just very grateful. And thank you.
George?
When I first met Casper, in fact, he met us, my wife and I, Casper was never a stranger to anyone that I know. He always was a person like we know him all his life. And he used to tell us about his experience in the Peace Corps when he went to Ethiopia. And it was very interesting, the things he told us about. One of his sons had shared something about Ethiopia. He had told us something about that too. I remember when he told us. But anyway, I'm not going to take too much time, but Casper was a very nice person if you ever know him. And I always will miss him. My wife will too, because he was never a stranger to anyone that I know myself. Thank you.
Thank you, George. How many here had a hug from Casper? Can I get an amen from the congregation? All right. Yeah, we got to pass that on. Jay and Casey and Nancy will need lots of those hugs. So I would like to encourage you to continue sharing over in the fellowship hall. Because Nancy and the boys will really want to hear those stories. So before we continue, I'm trying to think what's next on the, I think I need to do a prayer. I know what I'd like to say before I do a prayer, and hear from Pamela again, is that the the fellowship hall is located over here. There's going to be lunch served from Zocalo's, which was Casper and Nancy's favorite Mexican restaurant. They have catered it. And there will be music by a band that Jay has led. And if you are going to go to lunch, I encourage you to go that way, okay? If you cannot stay for lunch, Nancy and Casey and Jay will be at the back to greet those who cannot stay. But so if you're going to have to leave, please go out the center aisle, and the rest of you go through those double doors over to the fellowship hall, okay? And now let us be in the spirit of prayer. God of love, we thank you for all with which you have blessed us, even to this day. For the gift of joy in days of health and strength, and for the gifts of your abiding presence and promise in days of pain and grief. We praise you for home and friends, and for our baptism and place in your church with all who have faithfully lived and died. Above all else, we thank you for Jesus, who knew our griefs, who died our death and rose for our sake, and who lives and prays even now for us. And he would want us to pray together, and so I invite you to join in our Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
So I just shared just this other little thing with you. When Nancy and I was speaking about which song we might sing, we came to the conclusion that we would sing How Great Thou Art. And the reason why I think that this is such a wonderful song is because when I look at Casper's life, the life that he lived, you could really see that
I invite you to stand and receive their benediction. Now may the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord's face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may the light of his countenance be upon you this day. And may you go in the peace and the love of Christ. Amen.
This is my partner here.